This Choircast podcast is brought to you by The Joy of Letting Go by Kevin Sweeney. When one of the great living mystics, Richard Rohr, writes, all great spirituality is somehow about letting go. Do we just skim by it and look for the next great quote? Or do we allow this truth to utterly change our relationship with God, humanity, and reality itself? And if we accept letting go as the key to transformation, the question becomes how? How is each life-altering step of the spiritual journey somehow about letting go? Well, my new book, The Joy of Letting Go, is the answer to that question.
The majority of our life is lived in liminal space.
And there's this in-between space, this liminal space.
This liminality that reveals possibility.
I think we're in a liminal moment, but also in a place of transformation. We could actually change as a people.
I have great affection for the church and a troubled relationship with it.
That can't be the gospel because God said to love our neighbors.
Just to be alive in time means that we're on the threshold of the future.
Just to begin questioning is so difficult because you have these voices in your ears telling you that you're not a real Christian.
We don't know what the future looks like. We have to work it out together.
Welcome to the Liminal Living podcast, where we have conversations with those who are going through dark nights or deconstruction. Lauren Cibene, welcome to the Liminal Living podcast. It's great to have you on my screen today. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. We've got some sun down here, and so I'm happy.
Nice. Now, when you say down there, you're Atlanta, so that's probably warmer than Michigan, I'm guessing.
Yes, a smidge. Yeah, we've already had some pretty warm days up in like the 90s, 80s, 90s. So I'm envious of you guys up there.
Yeah, today's 70, and I'm like, hey, this is good. Like, we can run with this.
Yeah, that's hammock weather.
That is. Are you a fan of the hammock?
Oh, I love me a good hammock day.
We got the ones that kind of go over you so you can like camp in them.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, we did that a couple of times. We did hammock camping, and I must say, I am not a fan.
Oh, really? Why? Did you fall out?
It hurt my back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. That's like life after 30, man.
Yeah, and I'm pushing the 50 boundaries. But my wife is the one. She's the one that loves like camping and outdoors and hiking and all that stuff. I like being there, but I also like to go back to a bed that's more comfortable. So
yeah,
we got to balance those things out. Cool. Well, it's good to have you here. You wrote this book that I'd like to kind of dive into, but just to kind of get to know you a little bit. It seems like you're a fan of reading. So a question I came up with was, if you could assign homework for every human on the planet, what is your required reading and why?
Oh, man, that's such a good, terrible, hard, great question.
Oh, that's the best kind. It makes you like cringe, like, I have to pick one? Gosh. Yes.
Man. Honestly, I would probably have to go with Life of Pi, the book. It inspired a lot of my memoir. Even the title is kind of like a wink to it. And I think that it is the perfect fusion of fiction that's so rooted in reality, but also fantastical. Like, there's so much there to unpack. It's just a meaty book, but a quick read. So yeah, I think I'd have to go with Life of Pi.
Okay. How did it compare to the movie?
Oh, well, I am a book over movie person always. And like, if you've read Life of Pi, you know that there's so much that was left out of the movie, just simply because you can't, it's not the right medium, film is not the right medium. So, but I mean, it's fine. The soundtrack's beautiful.
Well, I haven't seen the movie or read the book, but I've had multiple people tell me that I need to. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna have to throw that on my list, maybe my Audible list.
Oh, it'd be a good audiobook for sure.
Yeah. If I could pick one that everyone had to read, I think it would be Grapes of Wrath.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm putting that on my list. I've not read that one. Tell me why.
If somebody asked me, like, what is your doctrine of sin? I'm going to tell them to read that book and then come talk to me. Okay. Because it follows this family from Oklahoma that's displaced off their farm by the industrialization of kind of the farming materials like tractors and whatnots. And then the banks come and foreclose. And so then they start going towards California, and they're just basically packed everything into, including all of themselves, into this pickup truck, and they start going to California to try and find a new life. It's like this promised land. Once we get there, things will be great again. But when they arrive there, they're treated like second-class immigrant citizens, like all these Oklahomans showing up in our land, and then they're peach pickers, and they keep struggling through poverty. It's just it shows like systemic evil on display in narrative form in probably the best way I've encountered in a book. So,
wow.
Yeah. So
well,
it delves into it.
It's gone on my list for sure. Yes. Grapes of Wrath. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So there it is. Well, what kind of soil did your life grow up out of, and how did faith play a role in that?
I was planted in rich soil, I do have to say. I was a home educated student at home with my 3 siblings and my parents. I was very rooted in the local church, in the like your typical white American evangelicalism. So that was my life for a very long time. I was I was the kid that every summer I would go to apologetics camps, and I would learn the right answers, and I would learn how to debate people. And I had creationist biology classes, and I was in it. And a lot of I can't throw away all of that, but as I grew up, especially following a very traumatic event that happened in my life, my early adult life, I deconstructed pretty hardcore away from a lot of that. And it was a very painful and a very scary process that I had to go through, which is what my memoir centers on, is kind of like the tail end of that very dark deconstruction period of my life.
And I grew up also home educated, young earth creationist, but more the charismatic stream. So bring your own tambourine to church kind of Sunday. And
nice.
So I can relate to like that fundamentalist little bubble that you have to maintain. It's like, here's all the questions you're allowed to ask. Here's all the answers to those questions. And here's all the apologetics to back them up. That's it. Yeah. You're good to go.
Yeah, it's bubble is the right word too, because it's, all my friends, all of their parents, their families, coaches, mentors, anybody that I had in my world. Like I'm in the buckle of the Bible Belt. So it was, everybody is in that bubble, and to venture outside of that, gosh, is so scary.
Yeah. Well, when was the time when like the faith that you built in your head didn't match the lived experience, and you're like, wait a second. Like, what was that moment? What was that like?
Yeah. That moment had to do a lot with like myself, like my identity and how I viewed myself. I had crafted subconsciously these assumptions about who I was, and if I did this, this is who God would be. And this is how he would show up, and this is how, this was God. So if I held up my end of the bargain, and I was the good church girl, and I knew all the answers, and I, was continually like witnessing or fill in the blank, whatever it was. I had the purity ring, like all of it. If I did all of these things, then I could assume and expect that God would show up in a certain way. And then that just did not happen. And I did everything in my power to make the grade, and still was met with a life that felt out of control. There were elements that this traumatic event had happened in my life, and I just couldn't rationalize. Like I did it all right. And somehow did I do something wrong that I didn't foresee? There are all of these questions that then started cracking that exterior of that evangelical faith.
Yeah, it's like we're given that expectation that I called it the emotional prosperity gospel. I would totally shoot down the prosperity gospel. If you give this much money, then you can expect this much in return because you were faithful. And I would say, well, that's a bunch of BS. But then I had like an emotional prosperity gospel in my head. Like if I do all this stuff right, then my life should be happy and God should come in and, rescue me all the time. And,
right.
And then it just didn't work that way.
No. And even I remember hearing people say, like you will know hardship. Like that's part of being in this. Like you will know these things. But I watched other adults in my childhood and in my early adolescence. I watched them go through hard things. I watched them lose a child. I watched them as their marriage dissolved. And the thing that they would always say is, I just feel God's presence. Like I just feel such a peace, that transcends understanding. Like they would say all these things. And then when I was walking through my trauma and all I felt was anger and bitterness and abandonment, that's when I was like, okay, something's not right. Something is not as advertised. You know what I mean? And it was hard for me to figure out, like, where's the lie in this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We lost our second son 2 hours after birth. And that was my moment of like, wait a second, like what? Like what's going on? I thought I became a pastor and I'm like, I dedicated my life to this. And then, we're all praying. We knew something was up and we're all praying for God to come in and rescue and fix. And then it didn't. I remember coming out of the birthing room and all our family is there. Mm-hmm. And my dad was there and he was like looking at me with like expectant eyes, like, did our prayers work? Did it work? Is he okay? And I just shook my head at him and I was a youth pastor at the time. So I had to like maintain this facade of like, yeah, I'm a pastor and I have faith and I'm good. And there's just that social expectation that church members put on you. And then inside I was like, well, it appears that God's just going to do whatever the hell he wants. I'm just going to try and stay out of his way because I can't trust this guy. Yeah. And so and it seems to be brought on by like those traumatic events. Like it finally is the thing that can pierce the bubble and pop it. And then you look around and say, was it all fake? And then you have to try and figure out like, well, what is real? Mm-hmm. Like how did you start to put things back together to start answering that question? What is real?
Mm. Well, in the throes of and I'm so sorry. My heart breaks for you. That story is so tragic. And I hate that you had to walk through that and feel like you still had to keep up this persona or this mask. That makes me physically ill. Honestly, that's rough. For me, I was reeling from this traumatic event that had happened to me. I had always heard that counseling, you don't need to go to counseling. You need to pray. You need to be in your quiet times. You need to be in the Bible. I'd heard all these things. And the fact that I initiated therapy, just kind of is a testament to how low I was. Like that was kind of like level one of walking away, was because I had always heard these things about therapy. But once I got into therapy, I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression. I was also, I was not diagnosed with agoraphobia, but I was undergoing treatment because I had these physical reactions to leaving my house. So there was a lot that was happening. And I cannot explain what the rationale was behind this. But in the midst of all of that, my husband came to me and he said, I found these tickets to India and they're like $400. And there's this tour that I found. Like, can we do this? Can we go? And I said yes. And so it was kind of like a Hail Mary. I think that like, I wasn't even consciously aware that I was investing anything into this. I think I just knew that I had to do something to get out of my routine, this routine of just like misery. Mm-hmm. So we went to India, and to answer your question, that was the first step towards like breaking out of that.
Yeah. Agoraphobia, that would be like fear of leaving the house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that too simple of a description, or does that nail it down?
No, that nails it down for me. It's a complex, like I've talked to other people who had it, and they have a fear of things even coming into their house, like even like electricity can be like a fearful thing, like it's coming into your house. For me though, it was leaving, it was walking outside, and I worked from home primarily during this time. So I didn't really leave the house. And so when I had to, it was crazy. Like my body would shake. Even I would be like, what is this? Like, I don't feel fear necessarily, but it was like a very physical reaction.
Wow. And that, like, how long were you, like, under that agoraphobia? Like, I can't leave my house, and if I try, like, everything's going, like, how long did that season last?
That was, I would say maybe under a year. And during that time, that was like, as I was going through therapy. So it wasn't like back to back. I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD and these things. And then we went to India. There was a little bit of space in between where I was working with my therapist. I was healing, I was growing, I was doing these therapies to help get me to the place so that when he did end up coming and saying, hey, I found these tickets, I was in a better place to say, okay, let's try it.
Nice. What was that like to step on the plane? Like, were you scared? Were you nervous? Were you all the things?
I was so scared. Yeah, I was, and like maybe 40 days or something like that. I don't remember. I wrote it in my book, but not long before we touched down at our first airport, we actually went to Nepal and then road tripped into India. But the airport in Nepal that we touched down in is one of the world's most dangerous. And not long before we landed, another plane approached the runway from the wrong way at the same airport and burst into flames, and a bunch of people were killed. So there were all of these very real reasons for me to be very, very afraid. And then on top of that, there were all of my, my internal reasons to be afraid. Like I was wrestling very much with trusting people after this traumatic event, trusting other people, trusting myself, trusting God. Like my trust had been obliterated. So there were like, I didn't trust the pilots. Like I didn't trust, you know what I mean? Like there were all of these other complex issues that made it very, very scary for me.
What was it that made you say yes to India? Was there like a knee-jerk reaction and you were surprised by the yes, or was there like some processing that went through? Like, let me think about this. Like, was that a jump, a spontaneous thing, or was it more like well thought out?
No, it was a jump. It was a jump. And I think looking back on it, I think I was kind of playing chicken with the universe. Like, I don't think this is going to happen. But look, I'm saying yes, like I'm showing up, I'm doing my part, but I think I secretly expected it not to work out for some reason. And it did work out. So yeah, had to follow through on that one, which I'm so glad I did.
Oh, wow. How long did you spend in India?
The first trip was, I want to say maybe 15 days. And during the course of that, which is like, it's a short trip. It's only one of 4 that I write about, but it's like half the book because it was so transformative for me. And in the course of that trip, we met people in India, and I was offered a job that would require me to go back frequently to India, which I said yes again. Also maybe playing chicken with the universe. I don't know. But that's what continued to take me back to India a lot after that.
Well, with somebody like experiencing lots of anxiety and PTSD responses, to play chicken with the universe seems like really courageous. I really like that terminology. I've never heard that before.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if that was like leftover residue from like church girl, like I'm going to do all the right things. I'm going to, check the box. And yeah, I think I was maybe counting on like maybe time off requests wouldn't get approved by an employer, or maybe, the tour would be full. Like all of these things could have happened to derail that. And I could have said, well, I said yes, I showed up, I did my part. But yeah, the universe conspired to get me over there. Yeah,
it was like a direct challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I like to talk a lot about liminal spaces because they're very transforming to enter into liminal spaces. Sometimes they're voluntary and sometimes they're involuntary. They're thrust upon us or whatever. We go through something that we didn't plan on. But sometimes, it's like, no, I'm going to go and do this. It sounds like it's kind of voluntary and involuntary at the same time. You're like, I'm going to challenge this. Mm-hmm. So what in you started to change in the beginning parts of your trip in India? What did you start to notice?
Yeah. So India, I feel like I'm a pretty well-traveled person. And like in my youth, because we were homeschooled, we traveled a lot. But India is unlike anywhere else in the world. So India, even for someone who's not struggling with PTSD or like all of these complicated mental health blockers. It's going to require you to stretch and to trust and to go with the flow. And like, that's just how India is. I love it. And so for me, touching down, being suddenly very immersed in this culture where I cannot communicate with my taxi driver, for example, like I can't communicate with people around me. I already am like anticipating, or I guess I'm already not trusting really at all. It was like exposure therapy almost, because every single thing that I did was like a trust exercise. Like, do you trust to get into the taxi with the driver? Do you trust that, your water coming out of the hotel tap is not going to make you sick? Like, there are all of these instances where I was required to trust. And I describe it as like evolution inertia, because as I started making all of these tiny little decisions to trust and seeing that people were taking care of me and that I could trust them even in these little things, I started to like accumulate and build back that trust. And it started with people, and then it kind of progressed into learning how to retrust myself, and then eventually like that reached over into like learning how to retrust the divine, God.
That is, I can see those steps kind of building back into that. How you said trusting yourself again. What did that look like? To not trust yourself and then to find that you could? How'd that play out?
Yeah. So part of going through this traumatic event, and I think a lot of people who have also gone through these things can maybe attest to this, but there was a huge loss of trust in myself because I believed the lie that I should have foreseen this coming, or I should have been able to do something to prevent this tragedy from occurring in my life. And that's it's simply a lie. Like we can't foresee every little thing. And that's part of why my anxiety was so great, because I'd bought into this lie. And I essentially gave the keys to anxiety and was like, okay, so I believe this. I believe I could prevent tragedy. I should have prevented tragedy. Can you help me essentially come up with every worst case scenario so that at least I'll see it coming? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So because I hadn't seen this one traumatic event coming, I developed all of this anxiety and this loss of trust in self. And that it reached over into my faith as well, because I felt like how stupid that you trusted God to show up in this, like I felt like I myself had led myself astray. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had a lot of work to do in order to relearn how to trust myself and my intuition. And intuition is not something that I feel like the American Evangelical Church equips you to listen to and deal with. Like your intuition, your like just a gut instincts. I think that those, especially in women, are very silenced and muted. And so that was a whole other process for me, is learning how to listen to myself.
Yeah, because the intuition is dangerous to the established structure, because that might lead you outside of the bubble, and you can't. It might give you a question that we never foresaw or we don't have the answers to. So there's a lot of danger in intuition. I remember growing up, I was in a fundamentalist space post charismatic, and we went on this missions trip to Costa Rica, my first trip out of the country. I was like 17, and we went to visit the missionaries that were there. We got to kind of see their church, and I was like used to like very vibrant worship with like lots of music and tambourines and dancing and tongue speaking and all that kind of stuff. But this church that I was in was very much like they actually believed that emotions were from the devil.
Oh, wow.
Like you shouldn't let emotions lead you, guide you, speak to you, like that you can't trust them at all. And so we went to this church service, very vibrant, and people are clapping and whatnot. And we're used to standing there in suits with piano and hymns and organs. And so the leader of our team is like, well, what'd you think of the service, everyone? And this one older gentleman just lost his mind and started yelling like at the rest of the team, like, that was worshiping God with our emotions, and that is unacceptable. He was going off. And I was like, that was just a moment that like captured in my brain forever. Like, wow, like he's like really afraid. And even my fundamentalist self thought that guy was full of it. Like this guy's a little too far.
Ironically, very emotional.
Yes. Well, anger is okay when you're a fundamentalist. Anger is the only one you're allowed to have, I guess.
Right. True.
Yeah. But seriously, like intuition and emotion and those things, like they are our inner compass. And we're taught like, no, just follow the man or the book or the whatever. And you don't learn how to trust yourself and lean on it. So you're like learning to trust yourself. How did that play out in India? Like, how did you notice like, I'm going to trust myself and then do this thing? Did you notice like taking an extra risk?
To be in India, their culture and like societal expectations as far as eye contact and like physical proximity is very different from ours because they have like over 1 billion people. So like touching men very often will walk around holding hands. Like it's a very physically affectionate culture. And it also is very like staring is fine. Staring is not something that is, weird. So staring for me, like in my trauma recovery, eye contact was very scary. And I don't know if this is like a common thing. This was very big for me. I felt like, I don't know, like if someone looked at me long enough that they could see the whole thing, like they could see that I had like failed, that I had, like they could just see it all. So, eye contact and staring was very like intimidating for me. But I remember there was this one moment, we were on the Ganges River, which is a very sacred river. Every night there is a big funeral where cremated remains are pushed into the river to release the deceased into the arms of heaven. This is a Hindu belief. So we had gone to witness this because anybody can attend the ceremony. So we were on the Ganges River in a boat, and there were 2 women in front of me, and they were just staring. They were just staring at me. Very aggressive eye contact. They wouldn't look away. And I remember there was just something that shifted inside of me where like I felt like my lack of trust in myself was kind of what I felt the most in that moment. I felt like it was on display. They could see it. But then the shift happened when I realized like they're not demanding anything of me. They're not judging me. Like they're not making a face. They're simply looking. They're simply looking at me. How broken, like to be afraid to even be seen. So it was kind of this moment where I gained a level of like a self-awareness to realize like you're fine. Like you're here and you deserve to be here and you deserve to be seen even just as you are. Like this is okay. And it was a moment where like that, listening to that voice that was saying that to me and trusting that to be true allowed me to then look and meet their eyes and give them like a head bobble, which is kind of just like the cultural body language that's just friendly. And they were so friendly. Their faces erupted into smiles, and they brought their hands to their head in a namaste motion, which translated literally means I acknowledge the divinity in you. And so it was just this moment where I listened. I dared to listen to the voice that said, "Hey, you're okay. You can be here. You can be seen." So I showed up in that, and I was just super rewarded in that moment. It was a beautiful moment.
Wow. I noticed like this is something I'm just starting to get words for this kind of season of my life, is that like the concept of repentance, forgiveness, salvation in the evangelical church, like how it's practiced, not how it's held in our minds, but how it's psychologically practiced, is often alienation of the parts of ourselves that we don't like. It's like, we don't like heal from those things. We don't get over those things. We're just not allowed to do those things or be those things or acknowledge or look at those things. And so we, pray this prayer and then we alienate that part of us and we're like, now I'm good, Jesus has forgiven me and I'm all good. But then like an alienated part of yourself it refuses to stay alienated, and then it's going to ask for attention, for healing, for something, and then it just starts to leak out somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing, like, psychologically how we practice these theologies are not healthy, because we're just like partitioning off parts of ourselves that are now like, nope. And like, I look at Richard Rohr, and he says that we need to transcend and include. And so we can never not be who we were, but we can transcend who we were and somehow include who we were and then integrate ourselves moving forward. And I'm wondering if your fear of being seen is that evangelical psychological alienation of that part of you that's like, that needs to be stuffed away in a corner and never seen again, because that's horrible.
Yeah.
But thanks to Jesus, he's forgiven me, and I'll just, barrel on. You got any thoughts around that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I feel like that foundational belief, even just for ourselves, I see that manifesting in families that are like, oh, nope, we don't talk about that. We're just we're going to partition that off. I'm seeing it now. Close to where I live, there's a big ministry called Orange that makes. Oh, yeah. Have you seen anything about Orange?
I know they make kids ministry, youth ministry stuff for churches. I don't know much about it though.
Well, there's the founder. There's been like a lot of victims that have started coming forth about clergy abuse from the founder, and I just from just proximity, seeing the ministry, I know that is how that they dealt with it too. They were just like, nope, we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to keep going. We're going to stay the mission, stay the course, because we're doing so many good things over here. And I feel like I was that way as well. Like as the church girl that was checking all the boxes, like I'm doing so many good things here. But this like trust in self and all of these other things, like we're just not going to talk about. We're just not going to talk about that. It's too painful.
Yeah. We're taking a quick break here mid-show to let you know of an opportunity that Choir is offering. Are you deconstructing your faith? It's tough, believe me. I know, I've done it. But what if you didn't have to do it alone? Imagine having guides like Jim Palmer, Kristen Dumais, Jennifer Knapp, Brad Jerzak, Brian Zahn, Paul Young, and more by your side to help. I know I would have loved that on my journey. Well, now you can. Head on over to choiracademy.com, link will be in the show notes, and register for their Square 2 class using the promo code LIMINAL, and you will get 10% off. This course and community are designed to help you navigate your journey with wisdom and support, all because you're a fan of the Liminal Living podcast. Ministry leaders, how do you heal from the burnout, loneliness, and the relentless weight of leadership? Kaneo Center exists for you. For 5 years, Kaneo has walked with over 500 ministry leaders through their darkest seasons, offering a rare blend of compassionate coaching, therapeutically informed practices, and Jesus-centered renewal. Kaneo is launching new 24-week cohorts now, where you'll join a small group of leaders for weekly video coaching, guided curriculum, and reflections to rebuild your resilience. The cohort all ends with a retreat in Puerto Rico. As a Kaneo coach myself, I've seen how this space transforms lives. And for Liminal Living listeners, mention Liminal in your application at thecaneocenter.com/cohort to claim $100 off your cohort experience. You've poured into others, let Kaneo pour into you. If you're in a dark night or deconstruction, you know how vital it is to ground yourself in intentional practice. That's why I'm thrilled to partner with the Monk Manual, a journaling system inspired by monastic wisdom and backed by science. The Monk Manual is a daily journal companion for reflection, purpose, and aligning your actions with your deepest values. Whether you're rebuilding after deconstruction or seeking clarity in transition, this tool turns liminality into grounded growth. And now, Liminal Living listeners can save 10% on their Monk Manual using the code LIMINAL over at monkmanual.com/liminal. And remember, the wisdom of liminal spaces lies in how we journey through them. So do it with intention. And now back to our show. Yeah. You wrote about some of the more like mundane and overlooked places that were the most meaningful for you, like, rest stops and riverbanks as opposed to like the big temples. What was it about those like out of the way places that captured your attention?
Yeah. I think it was a lack of structure. And I think that there was enough room in these like liminal spaces, quite literally, because most of them were moments where we were in transition, or I was in transition from one place to another, or waiting for something to happen, waiting for an event or whatever. And those places, those moments turned out to be the most transformative because people, I think that they would they would be able to break into my routine a little bit more in a way that caused me to notice. So yeah, there's an instance where we were traveling 2 hours from Delhi to Agra, and we stopped at a rest stop, and I had a really beautiful moment with a woman in the bathroom. I was wearing a sari for this day of events, and they're very hard to put on. They're very complicated. This is a long piece of cloth, and I had done my best. I had tried, but it wasn't good. And she and I were the only ones in the bathroom, and she came out of her stall, and again with the eye contact, she's just looking me up and down, and I just felt like such an intruder or a poser or something. But she ended up just walking over, and she just took the last length of fabric off of me and just unwound the whole sari. She just unwound it all off of me and then redressed me. And it was like such a simple thing. Like, we couldn't speak to each other. We didn't speak the same language. This was like my final exam in learning to trust people in India. It was a beautiful moment. And I just felt like how indicative of this journey for me. Like, I showed up and I was so like out of sorts and just not really existing in my own body. She came along and redressed me in grace and, like just a very selfless, simple kind of love. So it was in those moments, those liminal moments those were most transformative for me.
It seems like liminal moments are moments where we learn how to live more open-handed. The Buddhists, say that we should live life open-handed because as soon as you clutch down on something, then it stops the flow of life from coming into you. And it's like, and then you kind of squish the thing that you have, and then you can't receive anything new. And those liminal moments are what teaches us to keep our hand like open so that life can continue to flow through it.
Yeah,
it seems like travel does that. Did you experience like a more of an open-handed kind of a living while you're traveling through India?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I love that like analogy. And yeah, anyone who has traveled for an extensive length of time, not that 2 weeks is like people have gone, 6 months, a year. But when you are traveling, you are very much like conscious of the fact that you are a visitor, you are a foreigner, you are a wanderer. So you have to be open-handed. You have to be receptive to whatever it is that's around you, the people, the food, whatever, because you're here, you're a visitor into their world. I think that's such a healing thing for people. So many Americans, so many people I know, when you ask them, like, do you have a passport? Like, when have you been out of the country? So many people say no. And it's always shocking to me. And I feel like it's a robbery. It's such a growing experience to be able to go into the world open-handed, like you're saying, and just be available, just be open and receive whatever it is the world has to give you.
Yeah. I wish we could make it more accessible.
Yeah.
For travel, and it can be very expensive to get a plane ticket and fly to, you got a wonderful deal on $400, I had to fly to Puerto Rico for a conference that I was teaching in, and I was like, wow, I got to have like a seat fee now. It's like, not only do I got to pay for my ticket, but now I got to pay for my bags, and then I got to pay for the seat I'm going to sit in. And there's like all these fees, and it ended up being like $800 just to fly there. And I thought,
wow.
I thought I bought the cheap ticket. It's just not that accessible in our economy. But I do wish, because travel is something that can change. So I do wish it was more accessible.
Yeah,
you get to be around different cultures. And that's so educational.
Totally. And I recognize it's absolutely a privilege to be able to travel. That's definitely needs to be said. I recognize that.
Well, you're in this, like, it's a different culture. It's a different religion. It's a different, like, everything is different. Was there anything about kind of their philosophical understandings of that cyclical death, rebirth, reincarnation that influenced, like, how you think of the world and trust in yourself in the world?
Yes. Yeah. I love that you brought this up. Yes. So reincarnation obviously is not something taught in my evangelical background. If anything, it's vilified, it's something that you're like, this is wrong. You're taught these things. But when you are in a culture where reincarnation is such a foundational belief, something that maybe people over there don't really question, they just assume, like this is what we believe. It seeps into to a lot of their culture, that worldview. And when you are opening yourself up to immerse yourself in a new place, like you can't help but also feel that. Yeah, and I feel like for me, as I was in this very dark deconstruction, painful season, I felt very much like this is death. Like this is the death of something, and that was very impactful for me, because in my worldview, death is the end. Like you go to heaven or whatever, but like death is, there's something about the finality of it. But being in this new culture where it's a cyclical thing, there are seasons to it, it made me more open to, wait, okay, so maybe this isn't like the end. Maybe this is a season. Maybe this is something that on the other side, there will be new life and rebirth. And maybe that's not something to be afraid of. Maybe that's something that I can actually like find rest in, which before I had been very like clenched and tight and fighting it, fighting this deconstruction and this process. But something about being in India and observing those like cyclical rhythm that they have in their own spirituality allowed me to be more open to that in my own.
And that's definitely a part of the Christian tradition, would be that death and resurrection. And like you experienced that through their understanding of reincarnation. I think that is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I had a question that was right on the tip of my tongue that I wanted to go to next, and then it slipped out as I said those last words. It happens. Let's see. You mentioned like travel teaches you how to be humble, and oftentimes when you're an evangelical, you construct like the mental castle. Like, this is the way reality is. I've got it all figured out. And it's almost like this cognitive pride that we end up embracing. How did this traveling to a whole other country teach you humility and a sense of wonder also?
Yeah, I love that like cognitive pride. Is that what you said? That's the term?
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I definitely had cognitive pride, especially like I was the apologetics kid. Like I would go to these camps every summer. Like I had it. I had all of that. Yeah. And when you're suddenly in a situation where none of those answers are even relevant, like all of the memorizing, all of that, like that does not apply here, because that's not the religion of the people that you're going to come into contact with. All of the like conservative political answers you have memorized as well, like that no longer applies. None of the politicians over here are, you don't know their names. So entering into that, you have such a like a humility, and like you have to, because you just don't know. Like you don't know the answers anymore. And at first that was very scary. It felt very scary not to know what to say, what would get applause, what would be like the talking points. But once I got past that initial fear, and honestly, what that was is like an addiction to control. Mm-hmm. I was addicted to feeling in control of my spirituality, of knowing the answers, which, was just an addiction that I had to break. But once I got past that, it was such a beautiful like learning opportunity for me. Like I would enter into conversations with people that I met that obviously spoke English, and I would ask them about religion or about politics or whatever it was, and I had no axe to grind. I had no ground to protect, because it's not my home. It's not my religion. It's not my, my political whatever. And that became my new addiction. And I've endeavored to come back and maintain that curiosity when talking to people, instead of jumping to like I need to know what to say next. Like I need to anticipate what they're going to say so that I can say the right thing. now I can just be, at ease in conversations for the most part, and just allow people to for them to show up in their fullness, whatever that looks like,
Yeah. When is that most challenged in like that new mindset in your current? When do you find it hardest to keep practicing that?
Honestly, it's hardest when people try to pull me back. I feel like people are trying to pull me back into the world of answers and always and absolutes, and like when they start to pull me back into that, which being in the Bible Belt, this is Trump Nation down here, so I feel like there's very much an addiction to absolutes, which I can't hold to. I can't hold to that anymore. So, when I'm entering into a conversation with someone and they're trying to be like, no, this is the only way. This is the deal. This is just the truth, about politics or about religion, I remember this keeps coming up. I don't know why, but people talk about Rob Bell talking about whether or not Gandhi's in hell. And they're very adamant that they know the answer. And so that's when it's hardest for me to stay humble and to stay, with that grace.
Mm-hmm. There is a way to challenge in humility as well. Be in disagreement. Be sure of uncertainty.
Yeah.
There's a way to I kind of sometimes when I'm like most mad at somebody, it's because I'm mad at who I used to be and I'm seeing it in them. And I haven't forgiven that part of me fully. They're still a little bit alienated. I'm still a bit pissed off at myself for being that way. And then I see it in someone else, and then I'm like, it just like riles me up. But then I encounter somebody who's very different from me, and I can maintain that like sense of neutrality almost. But it's really hard when I find somebody that's very close to who I used to be, that I still haven't, fully accepted the fact that I've moved on from that. And I look back and, I shake my head like, I can't believe I used to say that or believe that or do that. And then when I see someone else doing that, I'm just like, oh, that really like grinds my gears.
Wow. Yeah, that resonates so much with me because when I'm in India and I'm talking with a Hindu man, even if he's very dogmatic and he's got these beliefs that he's very passionate about, it's very easy for me to stay in that space, like that grounded space. But yeah, you're right. It's the people that remind me of who I used to be that are the hardest. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, your husband was a companion in this whole journey. How did navigating that whole chaos together affect your relationship together?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Highly recommend. Highly recommend traveling with the person that you love the most. We had a learning opportunity as a married couple on all of these trips. So there were 4 total that we were able to go on, and he was able to go on all of them with me. Even if not for the full time, he was able to at least show up. And in the healing process that I was going through, of course, because he's my husband, he also was going through his own kind of healing process to process, I've got a spouse that has this, this traumatic event. She's working through all these things. We don't exist in an island. Of course, that's going to impact him. So he had his own kind of healing experiences to go through it. And he is a missionary kid who was born in Israel, grew up in Scotland, moved to the U.S. when he was a teenager. So he's like a third culture kid, and he loves travel. That's what brings him to life, is to be able to interact with people who are different than him and to connect and to learn new things and try new foods. So while it was more abrasively healing for me, it was more comforting healing for him, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was more of like his zone.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What are you most sure of these days? In a humble way, like it's not a negative thing, but what are you most sure of right now?
I am not sure of a lot, but I would say with humility that I've found this to be true. And this is a quote from Life of Pi, from the book. And it's spoken by a Muslim man. And he tells the main character, if you take 2 steps to God, God runs to you. no matter what that looks like, I think that's going to be different for every person. But I have found that to be true, that if you take 2 steps towards, and you can fill in the blank, like your highest self or enlightenment or whatever it is that is like the pinnacle for you. But if you take 2 steps, 2 conscious, effortful steps, I feel like God, the divine, the universe, humanity, like it runs to meet you there. And that's my favorite quote from the book, and maybe of all time.
What would 2 steps look like as compared to 1? This is the nerdy part of my brain coming out. Like, I love the symbolism of that, but like, what does 2 steps look like? Like, it's almost like extra commitment, not just 1, and then I second guess myself. But like, how do you define that whole 2 steps forward kind of a thing? What does that look like?
I think to circle back to the first thing we were talking about, playing chicken with the universe. I think that's what it looks like. I think 1 step can be easily pulled back. 1 step can be, like, oh, I'm not sure. I didn't know. But 2 steps, I feel like there has to be a little bit more intentionality to it, where you're aware of the direction you're going, and you're affirming it with that second step.
I like that. That's a good descriptor for that. I do like that. Well, how did you land on the title for your book? I mean, that's a really interesting title.
Yes.
What? Remind me the full title. It was Tiger in a Lifeboat, right? Like,
yes, Tiger in a Lifeboat.
How did you come up with that? Where did that come from? That's really interesting.
Well, there's going to be a spoiler here, especially because you haven't read the book. Is it okay if I spoil something a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So in Life of Pi, it's a beautiful story. Everybody kind of knows it, the bones of it. There's this kid who's shipwrecked at sea with a tiger in his lifeboat, and at the end of the book, there's this beautiful moment where insurance adjusters or men for the insurance company come to him to ask him about the shipwreck that landed him there, as his family was moving their zoo from India to Canada. That's where the tiger comes from. It's from the zoo. And so they're asking him questions, and he's telling this story about him surviving for, I think, over a year in a lifeboat with a tiger at sea. And at the end, they say, we just don't believe this. We just don't believe this story. We don't think that this is true. And so he then tells them the same story, but instead of the tiger, he himself is in the role of the tiger. And so there's this conversation amongst readers as to which story is true, because it's the same story, but any animals in the actual, the meat of the story is replaced by people. So people say the tiger is a representation of Pi's stronger, fiercer, braver self. And he created this tiger in his psyche as like a survival mechanism.
That's so beautiful.
It's great. It's so beautiful. And so I kind of riff off of that because the story matters to me so much. And so in my own healing journey, I was like willing myself, like, where's my tigress? Like, where's my tiger that I I thought that there just were no tiger elements in me. That I could like frack up, into this alter ego. But in writing the book, I was able to kind of discover, no, actually, like there was a tiger there all along. The tigress is what I call her. So there's no like confusion between Pi's tiger and my tigress. But that's where it comes from. So it's Tiger in the Lifeboat is really kind of this projection of myself.
Nice. Well, if somebody is feeling just like stuck right now in their own liminal space, whether they're in a dark night or deconstruction, or they're like on the verge of one, like how would you advise them to begin that journey? What would you urge them to like hold on to, and what would you tell them to let go of?
That's a good question. I would say, gosh. I hesitate to answer quickly because it's so unique. There are so many ways that people walk through this experience, walk through the dark night. I will say that I know for me, my deconstruction season was kind of broken into 2 parts. And the first part had to do with affirming my pain, affirming the questions, affirming the confusion, affirming just like the disappointment, just this is not how I thought it was going to be, and I just want to sit and be upset about that for a minute, you know. So that was the first half, was really savoring that bit. The second half was a realization that I still very much had agency, and I had discernment, and I had power. So it was moving more of in a direction of vision, I think, rather than the healing part of the first section of my journey. So, but it's tricky. I think that if you rush to tell people like, hey, you have power, you have agency, you know, like if you rush to say that, it can feel like a dismissal of the pain. So I would tell people, if you feel still like you need to be angry, and you need to be, you know, you need to break things, and you need to be sad about the way this went, don't rush that. Sit with that, and as long as you can. And when you're ready, remind yourself, hey, I have power, I have agency. This is my story, and I say this is not how it ends.
That's powerful. That's very powerful. I was talking with a friend today who's found himself in a liminal spot, and kind of the age-old liminal illustration of the trapeze artist, you know, where you let go of the rung behind you and you're kind of suspended in air. The other rung hasn't come to you yet. And we were talking about like, that's where you are right now. And you can't like push your way forward. You can't move sideways, up and down. You can't go back. Like you're here. But if you adopt like this passivity that says, well, I just can't do anything, I'm just stuck here, then you're going to splat on the ground, you know? So there's like this active passivity that we can embrace in those. Like you got to be like really focused on what the possibility that is coming towards you. Because if you're not paying attention, if you're not attentive, if you're not, you know, ready, there is a way to be at rest and passive and surrendered with an active empowerment. And I'm still trying to like parse out what that looks like. But I know that like my evangelical upbringing taught me like, no, God's in control. He's got this and whatever. And I've splatted so many times because I was just over passive. But there's this like, then there's that I need to make everything happen on my own kind of a thing that also doesn't work. So I'm trying to find that balance between the active passivity, that there is power. I need to be focused. I need to be ready because things are coming my way. Possibilities exist in this day. And I need to, you know, be ready to see them and then make something good out of them. Yeah. And so like God is found in those possibilities each day. So I'm trying to figure out how like empowerment and like this surrendered life like go hand in hand. And I haven't figured it all out yet, but I've been really liking that image today.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, and there's something affirming about hearing like, hey, like God is there, God is in the in-between. No matter, like, we can't focus on what we've left, and we don't really know what's coming, but that's okay, because right here, like we've got it. We're here.
Possibility exists today.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so much fun talking with you and getting to know you and your story. Where would you like to send folks to connect with what you're doing and buy your book?
Sure, yes. So I am on Substack. It's laurenscibene.substack.com, and that's Cibene spelled Charlie, India, Bravo, Echo, November, Echo. So you can find me there. I write a lot about deconstruction and about writing. And then my book, Tiger in a Lifeboat, is out May 6th, and it's anywhere you buy books, you can find it.
Nice. This one will air a couple weeks after the release of your book, so they'll be able to go and get it. So I'll include those links down in the comments, and they can just click on them and find you that way real easy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your work. It was great.